So let's get started. So, like I said, thank you all for coming. It's really an honor that all you guys came, and so many experts in forest management, wildlife management, all the landowners and interested private citizens are here. I think it's safe to say that we have not only decades of experience, but centuries of experience in this room, which is always really blows my mind thinking about this. We have many thousands of acres represented here in this room, maybe tens of thousands of acres even, when you include especially the public land management. I thought I'd share a little bit about myself. I don't know a lot of you, and you might not know me, so I thought I'd just give a little two minute share of who I am, where I came from, how I got here. So I'm a relative newcomer to this area. I grew up in Texas, but as a young 14-year-old boy, my parents didn't hunt. We lived in a small city. But I was an awkward, kind of unsure of myself, and I always found solace in escaping into nature. And and I was also attracted to the idea of self-sufficiency and independence, and I was really interested in hunting and like learning how to be connected to the land and bring home my own food and all that kind of stuff. And it was in these like late summer dove hunts over the sunsets of the grasslands of Texas, where I just really fell in love with the outdoors, and it all cemented. So I graduated high school and I left Texas. I ended up going to Indiana, went to the University of Notre Dame, and they didn't really have a land management program. They didn't have ecology. They didn't have all the things that our land grant schools have. So I got a degree in a great books program. We read books from Aristotle to Dostoevsky and others. And that sort of set me up for law school. I was thinking this might be where I go. And I went to DC and worked for the Justice Department for a few years as a paralegal in the antitrust division, and a temporary detail in the public affairs office sidetracked me from law school and got me into public affairs for a few years. And an opportunity opened up at the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco, where I worked for a few years after that. So it brought me out to California from DC. I was 24 years old and taking calls from the New York Times. It was kind of scary, but really exciting at the same time. But I never lost sight of how to get back involved with the environment and outdoors and management. And so after a few more years in that position and a short stint in corporate PR, I decided it was time to make the jump. If I was going to do it, I had to do it now. I was 27 years old. So I pursued graduate school at that time. I went across the bay to Berkeley. I looked at schools in Texas and across the country. But only Berkeley was the school that was crazy enough to accept a kid with an undergraduate and great books and 5 years of public relations experience into a range management and wildlife management degree. So they took a chance on me, and I was very grateful for Dr. Bartolome for doing that. So after I graduated there, I started a faculty position at UC Berkeley, but unfortunately, and I love that position, but I love my wife more. We met in graduate school. At the same time, we both got jobs. Mine was at Berkeley and hers with the Smithsonian, and she's a curator of arachnology out there. And if you don't remember what arachnology is, that's the study of spiders. So we have spiders all over the house. We don't kill our spiders. When a position opened up at University of Maryland in wildlife management, I jumped all over, and that's how I got here about 4 years ago. So since moving here, and that's enough about myself, but since moving here, I've really was just immersed and amazed by the trees and the forest. And I live in the forest and these huge red oaks and the white oaks. And it's just like, wow, I invested in all this tree climbing equipment, got a chainsaw because we had trees growing all over the place by our house, learned how to identify my trees. But I really accelerated my learning when I attended a Delmarva Woodland Stewards program. And I helped run the Delmarva Woodland Stewards program in 2022. And it was designed for private landowners to learn all about forest management. And during our training sessions, and I was a relative newbie and I was just sort of facilitating the workshops, I kept hearing repeatedly from foresters and wildlife specialists about two crucial factors in forest management. One was the critical importance of light and sunlight, and two, of having structural diversity in our forests. And so regarding that sun and that light issue, all life depends on the sun. It all feeds all the plants and all the animals that live off the plants. And so the manipulation of sunlight to the forest floor is key to encouraging a diversity of plant growth that is accessible to a diversity of wildlife species. So that course really transformed how I looked at the woods. I began to notice species present, the ages of the tree, the understory. Was light coming down to the forest floor? Were there any openings that had wildflowers in them with insects and caterpillars? Were there any places for animals to take shelter in the winter? Were there any place for them to hide from predators? Craig Harper from the University of Tennessee spoke at one of our events, and he mentioned, I was blown away when he mentioned that strategic thinning of trees could produce more forage for deer than a traditional food plot, soybean food plot in an agricultural setting. So I started to observe how relatively bare many of our forests, especially where I live in Southern Maryland, how bare the understories are. You can walk through, there's no plants really growing, it's leaf litter all over the floor, and you don't have to worry about getting ticks because there's nothing that brush up against your legs. And realizing they were kind of like empty grocery stores for anything living below 4 feet tall. So it was like, for me, this realization was like a curtain had been lifted and I saw the forest with new eyes. And I hope that this event after today, many of you come away with that same experience. I started organizing this workshop around ruffed grouse. Bob Long here, one of our first early speakers here, mentioned he was more concerned about them than bobwhite quail. And we all know how bad bobwhite quail are doing. But as I was doing this research for the presentations, I found species after species after species that were in decline. And there was a similar theme of something that they all had in common, is they needed some kind of forest management, whether it's forest openings, understory vegetation, mid-story, young forests, disturbances, clear cuts, thinnings, and more. When I talked to Richard Bailey, he's our non-game speaker, who's going to be second up and after the game folks. He said something like this when we were lining this talk up. He said, it surprises people that the #1 priority for bird conservation in West Virginia is cutting more trees. In Maryland, where our forests are our #1 land cover, the same principle applies. I think forests are additionally important, not only because they're our largest land cover, but the remaining urban areas and agricultural areas have limitations for what we can do with them for wildlife habitat. There's either economic considerations or in terms of a city, it's very hard to move a city and create habitat in that environment. So I've come to believe that forests really present some of the lowest hanging fruit for having an impactful habitat restoration in our state. And I really believe that. In Maryland, 40 to 45% of our land cover is forests. It's the largest single land cover, and we can do so much with that. So today we have the opportunity to delve into these topics with speakers who will provide insights into various species, game, non-game, practical forest management techniques, how to plan for this, and also how to pay for this. There are government programs that can help provide money to help pay for practices. But it's not just for learning from our speakers to you, but it's also a chance for you guys to learn from each other, to meet, develop relationships with each other, and with advisors and speakers in this room who can guide you on managing your property. I really want to thank all the speakers and technical experts. Special thanks to those who also helped to inspire and develop the agenda. Bob Long was critical. Sheldon Owen from West Virginia Cooperative Extension, he's out in the back. He's going to lead our field trip at the end of the day. Justin Proctor, you hear Justin? I don't know if I've seen you yet. From Virginia Working Landscapes, he helped inspire this live workshopping on maps. And Ben Larson from Ruffed Grouse also helped me brainstorm this and make this format work. So real quick, I'm going to ask some people to raise their hands. I know that always makes me uncomfortable, but could all the speakers, foresters, natural resource advisors, farm bill biologists, agency personnel, people with wildlife experience, can you raise your hands just real quick, just so people can kind of know who's at their table and who can they maybe look at and think about getting information from, especially if you're a private landowner looking to do management on your property. So many of these people will be sharing their experience and ideas during that live workshopping session, where we're going to have 20 maps of different people's properties. People who've agreed to do this workshopping, we'll have them out on these tables and we'll be able to draw with markers on top of the maps and things. So big thank you. I think what you guys do on your properties makes much more of an impact than what I can do through educational programs, because people see what you do. You have friends and neighbors and networks and communities, and I think that makes a big difference. So thank you also to the students and administrative staff who helped make this possible. Taylor Robinson, where are you at? Is she out in the back, running things from the back? Thank you, Taylor, Evan Griffiths, Joshua Johnson as well. Really appreciate your help and advertising this. I see this event, and I'll wrap it up here, as a stepping stone towards making really landscape scale changes that we need to support our declining species. So let's work together to transform our forests and enhance wildlife habitat. So with that, I am excited to introduce our first set of speakers, and we're going to speak about game species to get started. And we have three great folks. Raina Tile, she's with Pennsylvania Game Commission. She's going to speak about ruffed grouse. Bob Long is going to speak about American woodcock. And Emily Boyd's going to focus on rabbits. And they might get into other wildlife species too, but we'll let them take it away.